Welcome to the God is Not an Asshole podcast. If you are one of the many people done with religious dogmatism, hang on. You might sense transcendence, but your church or other faith community never seem to get off the ground. You realize that honoring your conscience means more than fitting in and keeping hard to explain rules? Hang on. You could probably think of the goodness in your tradition, and you tried your best to save that baby, but there's so much bathwater. Join your hosts, David Norman Moore Jr. in California and Kerry Connolly in New Jersey, who are collaborating to bring on guests who have found life on the other side of fundamentalism. Guests with stories of how they have liberated themselves from beliefs that divide us from each other. None of our guests' narratives are identical, but we hope you'll find something in common with each of them. We invite you to experience our common bond as we all inspire even more of us to embrace the true self.
My last day attending church, aside from the internships that I had to do for seminary, but my last day, but this was before I started seminary. My last day in church was the week after the 2016 election. And the reason that it was my last day was because of the middle of the line, moderate road that was taken by church leadership that I felt was lukewarm when it comes to justice. It was a very much there are good people on both sides kind of thing. It talked. Obviously the speaker was somebody who is pro-life, which I really call him pro-birther, not pro-life, because you can't be pro-life and ban abortions outright. It makes no insert curse word sense. It just doesn't. It makes me so angry. And the way that whole issue has been commandeered by the Christian right is ridiculous. It wasn't always that way, by the way. It's total political play. This idea that there could be both, like that there was no stand for actual justice. There was no stand for the love of Christ, because the love of Christ is justice oriented. You cannot deny that. I cannot see how anybody could deny that Christ, Jesus, that the Jesus of Nazareth who walked this earth did not stand for justice and inclusion, whether he did it silently or whether he did it flipping tables over. Both times it was on the side of justice for the marginalized and for the oppressed. And that's why he was lynched by agents of the state. And so I could no longer attend an institution that would be so lukewarm. And I didn't think I would find place in church again. And to be honest, I haven't really found church. Found a place where I can be in church. Yeah. It's much more in community and communion with people who are like-minded, justice-oriented, and deeply spiritual.
And so this kind of got, it was ignited in 2016 after the election.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was following, among other people on Twitter, Rachel Held Evans, who is no longer with us.
Yeah.
And Diana Butler Bass, they were having a conversation. And for those who are listening right now, those are people who would prove to you that God's not an asshole. But anyway.
Yes, indeed. Both of them.
But Diana Butler Bass more represents more of the mainline church world. Mm-hmm. And Rachel Held Evans was kind of birthed by the evangelical church world. And so their constituencies were a little different, are a little different. But they were meeting on Twitters with this frequent refrain that I cannot believe how many people have told me that they have not been back to church. This was 2 months after the election, 3 months. And they were both saying this. And I didn't get any traction with this, but I replied to them. I said, I can believe it because Black folks have been trying to tell y'all all of this time that it's not real. What you are doing is not real.
Indeed, indeed. Oh my goodness. I can't even begin to tell you some of the stories from that I have heard and seen and experienced in white church when it comes to the double talk that will give to anti-racism efforts, right? The ways in which we really don't want to put our money where our mouth is, or our bodies where our mouths are. Like we really we love to slow the process down as much as humanly possible in so many ways. Deaths by committee, you know, uh, dotting every I and before allowing something to move forward. It's kind of fascinating. I have to say, this is really funny though. Little aside and another personal little story about Diana. I have a personal thing. I've met her a few times.
Diana
She would
Butler
not
Bass.
know. Yes,
Yes.
she would not know who I was. I've met her a few times, but she would never know who I was. But she is very good friends with a very dear friend of mine. And his name is Mason. And we're going to have Mason on here because he's an amazing podcaster.
What's Mason's last name?
Meninga, you've met him
Oh,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
He was
yeah.
in the
Okay.
class. Yeah. So he's like rock star famous on Twitter. So I always tease him. He's my Twitter famous friend. He's got like 27,000 followers, and he has slept on my couch. So just saying, Mason. But Mason is he's I should probably not put all of his business out on in the world, but he's having some exciting things happen to him. I'll just put it that way. And, Diana, he and Diana were having coffee, and she's like, well, Mason, I am like your spiritual mom. So I better be first in line to get this news. And I'm like, first get in line, lady, get in line. Mason's got some other people he's got to talk to before he calls you when the good things happen to him. So, but yeah, Mason is another person who has gone through some major deconstruction. And I think that as we move into how we're going to approach this topic moving forward, one of the things that we really want to do is we want to have conversations and interviews with people like Mason, people like Matthew Paul Turner, other people who have gone through their own deconstruction process and come out with a vibrant, on the other side, with a vibrant, viable faith that brings them joy and supports them in all of the ways that supports their full authenticity, the fullest expression of their authentic selves, right? In beautiful ways. And I think one of the most beautiful things that I remember in my seminary experience, because so many of us were going through this deconstruction process, and one of our professors, her name is Helene, she said, I know that the deconstruction process is really hard. And when you get to the bottom of it, it can feel really, really like a place of real deep grief and loss. But once you get there, keep going. Don't stop at deconstruction, right? She said, keep going and rebuild, find the new faith, because faith, deconstruction is not and the antithesis of faith. It is an act of faith to question and to wrestle with. It is an act of faith. And I think that's Colby Martin who said that recently. And he's another one we need to have on here. Colby Martin says, faith is, or deconstruction is an act of faith. It's saying, I believe in this. I want to stop believing that God is an asshole and start believing that God is good. How do I get there?
How do we get there? Well,
how do we get there?
I think that one of the things that you said earlier kind of, points us in that direction. It's a realization that it became very poignant for you when you were 3 years old. It's a lifelong experience. It is
indeed,
but it has to. It needs religion to keep it suppressed. These intuitions, these sensitivities that we, they are crushed out of us, and so we have to give place to them. We have to give space to them, which is, you were talking about earlier today. You had a great time in meditation. We really need to learn to practice solitude, to approve of the voice that we are, the internal us. To approve of that. If you're never listening to that person, by implication, you're saying that person's not worth listening to.
Right.
But the more you listen, you're
wait. Say that again. Hold on. Say that again. What did you just say? If we're not paying attention.
If you're not paying attention to the voice that you are, and you keep repressing it, then you're assigning a value to it. You're saying that this person is not worth listening to,
Ooh,
when in
that's
fact
good.
that person is supremely worth listening to.
Yes,
And that's why
beautiful.
we are here. That's what this is about.
Yes.
That's what this podcast is. It's about elevating people's own consciences.
Yes, yes, I love that. So another really beautiful moment in my seminary experience that I had was Doug had us meet with a rabbi who he taught us, and I wish I could remember his name. I don't. I have to give credit. It's really important to give credit. So I'll try to find my notes. I don't know where they are, but I'll try. But this guy said, the text that says, that is translated from the Hebrew scriptures as I am that I am, right? Where God identifies God's self, right? And says, I am that I am. He says that is actually a really horrible translation. And the actual Hebrew in that text cannot actually, there is no direct literal translation. It has its own meaning. But a much closer translation would be, I will become all that I have yet to become, or I will be all that I have yet to become, which rather than pointing to a static God that never changes, God is actually becoming, that the very nature of God is becoming, right? Which leads me to think about process theology, which talks about a God that is not all powerful and omnipotent and always knows exactly what's going to happen, which leads you down the road to predestination, which is a very dicey road to think about.
And God can't be good in that situation.
Exactly.
God can only be stubborn.
Exactly. And an asshole in that situation, right? But rather in process theology talks about a God that is always offering us the best possible invitation in whatever situation we find ourselves in. And it's called that holy lore, right? So in any situation I'm in, whatever my circumstances, I am always being offered the best possible choice to make. And I can choose to make a different one. And guess what? God's going to meet me there with the next best possible choice, right? I'm always being offered the best possible choice with the presence of God, right? And I think that's such a beautiful way, and a beautifully different way to think about the divine than what so much of evangelical offers us, And so those are some of the topics that we're hoping to dive into more deeply.
So everybody, we are Kerry Connolly and David Moore, and this is God is Not an Asshole. And we are delighted to report to you the veracity of our claim and how enthusiastic we are about all of this. And I'm so delighted I told Kerry some weeks ago, I said, by getting her to offer to do this, I said, I feel like, when a baseball player gets called up to the majors and their first at bat, they hit a grand slam.
Oh my gosh. I feel so honored to be here. This is incredible. I'm so excited to have these conversations. I love talking about this stuff.
And I appreciate the privilege here, Kerry, and this is very profound for me, to invite you again to be a part of a movement in this respect. We talked about how this deconstruction, this healing thing that's going on, people coming into contact with themselves, encountering themselves, especially over the past few years, and making what otherwise would have been unthinkable decisions with their lives, but they're recognizing their accountability to their own selves. But there's another movement that I am honored to be a part of. I was born in 1954, the same year that Oprah was born, the same year that Denzel was born, the same year that Condoleezza was born. The only difference is that I have a last name. But anyway, there's another person born that year that I have a profound degree of respect for, and that's Mumia Abu-Jamal, who is a political prisoner in the United States that most of the United States, most of our listeners will not recognize this name, I'm thinking. But Mumia Abu Jamal has spent most of his adult life in prison. His wife died just a couple of months ago. And it's so amazing to me how we are able to keep knowledge of him from the public as a society when he is the only person that Paris has made an honorary citizen besides Pablo Picasso. Mumia Abu Jamal is an honorary citizen of, and they've named a boulevard after him. And so Parisians know about him, the French know about him, but here in the States we don't. But anyway, he was born the same year, 1954. And 1954 is the year of Brown v. Board of Education, which essentially renewed a movement for righteousness in this country. And I feel like I am part of that movement, and I'm a product of the movement. You know, I share so much with those famous people that I mentioned earlier, in that our parents or our grandparents were part of the Great Migration, leaving the South. You know, Denzel's family in New York, Oprah in
Chicago, right?
Chicago, yeah, and Condoleezza's family went to Colorado, and my parents came to California. So they all came from someplace in the South and relocated as part of the Great Migration, and it just brought a spiritual release, I think, to our country. Brown, you know, I have the greatest respect for Thurgood Marshall, and you know, what he did in order to bring about Brown v. Board of Education, which did not change everything, but it changed it inside. You know, in the minds and the hearts, something had to be recognized that had been denied before. Well, one more person who was born the same year, 1954, was Ruby Bridges, who was, you know, accompanied by the feds in order to integrate her school as a little girl. Now,
Yes.
I integrated my school as a little boy, born the same year as Ruby. We lived in San Francisco, so I didn't need armed accompaniment. However, this was this is still the 1950s, you know, and the early 60s when I was integrating my school, and the treatment was horrible. So in a way, I feel like I'm a pioneer of trauma, you know, with kind of an anonymity to someone like a Ruby Bridges. And I feel like it's the greatest honor to be a part of this generation. And when I say I feel honored to be able to invite you, Kerry, to be a part of it, because there have always been people who are non-Black who have been essential, who have been vital to making it happen, you know, especially during the 60s. The marches were, you know, there were a lot of Unitarians, a lot of Jews, you know, not evangelicals, but still there were humans who were not Black who carried a great part of the burden. And so, you know, that's how I see you. I welcome you as a part of my experience in my life. And so welcome to the movement.
Thank you. That really, sorry. I don't know if, I really appreciate you saying that. And it's an honor and a privilege, literally, to be able to do, the work that I do. And I always do it with, great humility, and always, and when I say great humility, it almost sounds really not humble to say I do this with great humility. But what I mean is, like, I always try to do it carefully, really, really carefully, because there's so many opportunities for white-bodied people doing this work to do more harm than good, right? And I never want to do that. At the same time, I feel like the movement that you were born into and were a part of has reached a new phase, right? And that there is a new awakening that's happening, in which and I'm going to say this because people who know me and know my work know I don't really mince words when it comes to this. There's an ugliness in whiteness that is coming to the surface for everyone to see. It's always been there. It's always been there. And when you talk about Ruby Bridges and the pictures of the white women behind her, right, in those famous pictures, that was immediately what I thought of, right? That image is such quintessential whiteness, right? When I see that picture, those snarling faces at the back of that precious little girl, right? When I think about that, that is what we are being shown to our, like, whiteness is having to take a good look at ourselves, right? And to see our own snarling face. Yes. And I kind of see myself as a companion to white people who are ready to heal that part of themselves, right? Who are ready to face that in themselves, that shadow work, and to companion them. And I mess it up every single day. I say something wrong every single day. And I openly accept correction, and I pray that I won't do more harm. So your words of welcoming me to the movement came at a really good time, because there are days when I think I just need to just not do this work, not because I don't care about it, but because I might be doing more harm. Yeah. And that is always the thing that we have to be careful about as white people, to have the stamina to keep going. So
I think that's why I feel the liberty to welcome you, because, I see you as a friend. I see you as a co-worker. And, there are a lot of white folks who are experts. I mean, they don't express the humility and willingness to learn and be corrected that you do. I mean, there are somewhere out there, they got their program going, it's almost like they want to teach me,
yes. Let me tell you what it's like to be Black, David.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And invariably you'll find some religious roots to that.
Of course. Absolutely. Oh, yes, 110%. It comes down into the missions work, right? It's all, we could do a whole episode about that, just about the ways in which Christian missions work does so much harm and is rooted in white pseudo supremacy. We could talk about that a lot.
That's a question that someone like Doug Pagitt would and yourself would have to contend so much with, because you were the forerunners in your families in a sense. But, I think of someone like Brian McLaren, whose parents were missionaries, and he lived in Africa as a child, that kind of thing. How do you process the coming to terms with the questions that arise into the legitimacy of what your own parents might have done?
And listen, I may not have grown up in a family like that. However, the truth is that I worked on a staff of a church that still sends missions trips to Africa and still supports things like Project Shoebox, right? Yeah. Like these kinds of Christian evangelical or evangelistic types of efforts that are sending completely useless shoeboxes filled with completely useless plastic stuff over to impoverished areas of countries to send them stories about the gospel. And they're like, what am I supposed to do with this? I have no idea what this is, right? It's the industry of missions work is something that we could look at. And because churches are still doing it. It's, your average evangelical, I guarantee you, is involved in some sort of missions work, whether they're supporting it financially, whether they're doing it to their local inner city, or whether they're doing it to across the country or across the ocean. That kind of stuff is still happening. So it's very
my understanding of the people who are the recipients of that kind of largesse, if you want to call it that, would prefer other things. Yeah. And the things that they want are not necessarily things, but
correct.
They are the religious equivalent of Super Bowl jerseys from the losing team. Those things get things get shipped off to countries, where because there's no use for them.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the kind of thing that that people in the global South get from, and it doesn't mean that nothing good is ever given. It's just that there's this lack of recognition of the dignity of the recipients, that they're not just recipients because they're poor, they have been mistreated and excluded on a systemic and global scale.
Yes.
And so they deserve this. You're not giving them a gift, you're paying them back.
Yes, a small, tiny portion of the resources that we raped and pillaged their land for. Yes, lots of. So this is a little bit of a sampling of some of the conversations that we're going to have between the two of us, and hopefully with some amazing guests that we've got lined up. So I hope that wets your whistle a little bit to those people who are listening, as far as what we're going to be talking about. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to have these conversations.
Yeah, for anybody who listens, this is such a treat to us, because we are so in awe of you, for your survival, for you continuing to ask questions, for you getting knocked down but getting back up, and we're just here not as people who know it all, obviously, but we're here to say that we're here. We're here to be present for you, but we're looking for you to be present for us as well.
Yes. I love that. You're your companions on this journey, and you don't have to do it alone. And we're here to ask questions, and hopefully in our show notes and definitely in future episodes, we'll have an email address set up for you that you can send us questions, comments, all of that kind of stuff. We want to hear from you, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Woohoo!
Woo! Yay!
Thank you so much for being here today. We are people who have left behind performance-based religion and the shame that comes with it. Maybe you have a personal liberation story to tell, and we want to know about it. Please contact us on Twitter at God is not an asshole, or text 805-703-8393, because the world needs to know that God is not an asshole.